Mongols and Samurai. These two military classes, from very different geographies and cultures, came face to face at the end of the 1200s. The Mongols had large groups of soldiers trusted by the samurai, and the samurai had katanas, the sword. Here is the Mongols' attempt to invade Japan, which is not well known in world history. Marking the 13th century, the expansion policy of the Mongols, which started with Genghis Khan, continued during the reign of his son Ogodei Khan, who succeeded him after the death of Genghis Khan. Russia and most of Europe were captured in the west, and in the east, a part of Korea was occupied and North China was completely dominated. After the death of Ogodei, his son Möngke Khan sent his younger brother Hulagu Khan to the Middle East and his other brother Kublai to China. Kublai conquered Korea and China in a short time with his successes and declared himself the Emperor of China. After the death of Möngke Khan, Kublai Khan, who took over the Mongol Empire, now set his sights on Japan across the sea. In 1266, expressing his discontent that Japan had not sent any envoys to him for years, he sent envoys to the Japanese emperor to recognize his empire and pledge allegiance to him. In the letter he sent with the envoys, Kublai Khan introduced himself as the Great Mongol Emperor, referring to Japan, and demanded that the ruler of the small country send a delegation of envoys to him and pay him an annual tribute in exchange for their independence. However, the Japanese never responded to this request and ignored the Mongol envoys, not even admitting them to the palace. Although this attitude of Japan angered the Mongols, Kublai Khan continued to send a new delegation of envoys almost every year. Yet none of them were accepted either at the court in Kyoto or the shogunate in Kamakura, and some were even turned back from the island of Tashima between Korea and Japan before they even set foot in Japan. It was now clear that the Japanese did not want to have any relationship with the Mongols, good or bad. Kublai Khan took this as a sign of disrespect and began preparations for an invasion of Japan. Finally, in 1274, the Mongols built 300 large ships and around 500 small ships in their shipyards in China and Korea, and sailed with an army of 40,000, including Koreans and Chinese. In response, the Japanese were able to muster an army of about 10,000 men, mostly samurai. The Mongols first landed on Tashima Island and massacred the entire island population. Then they set their sights on Hakita Bay, where the Mongol army began its landings. The Japanese were inexperienced, as they had never fought against such a large force. In addition, the samurai who made up the Japanese army were accustomed to one-on-one duels according to their fighting traditions, so they were surprised by the Mongol army attacking them in large numbers. After the first day of battle, just as it seemed like Japan was about to lose, a large hurricane hit. The Mongol ship captains called back their troops from the battlefield, fearing that their boats might be washed away, leaving their army stranded in Japan. But once all the soldiers were on their ships, the hurricane intensified, sweeping away almost the entire fleet, along with the soldiers on board. Only few Mongol ships that survived had to turn back to Korea. Thus ended the first Mongol attack in failure. The Japanese anticipated that the Mongols would not give up and would come again, so they began to increase their defensive measures against a possible Mongol invasion. Samurai training was emphasized, as well as the construction of 2-meter walls at possible landing points, especially along Hakita Bay. In an unexpectedly peaceful move, Kublai Khan sent an envoy delegation of Buddhist monks. He also told the monks that if they returned without an answer, they would be executed. But the Japanese emperor again refused to receive this delegation. The Buddhist monks who could not return to Mongolian lands for fear of Kublai Khan were sentenced to death by the Japanese emperor after a while. After this hostile attitude of the Japanese, which could be considered as a declaration of war, swords were drawn again, and the second Mongol landing was inevitable. It was 1281, 7 years after the first attack. The Mongols were ready to strike with two separate forces. The first force was a fleet of 900 ships and 40,000 soldiers. The second force consisted of 3,500 ships and carried 100,000 soldiers. The war plan envisioned a two-pronged attack. The first force would attack from the north of the island, and the second from the south. However, nothing went as planned. When the 40,000-strong advanced force reached Takeda Bay, it had great difficulty penetrating the 2-meter defensive wall. Thanks to the walls and obstacles prepared before the battle, the samurai were able to repel the Mongols and even set fire to many Mongol ships in the night raids. Thus, despite heavy losses, the Mongol army, which could not advance for 50 days, changed its plans. An army of 100,000 men, expected to attack from the north, came to Takeda Bay to help. Thousands of Mongol ships on the sea were ready to invade Japan. But at this very moment, the second great miracle happened. A huge hurricane hit Takeda Bay again. The hurricane was so strong that out of 4,400 Mongolian ships, only a few hundred made it back to China, and 90,000 Mongolian soldiers drowned without a fight. After this incident, Kublai Khan, who lost more than 100,000 soldiers and thousands of ships in 2 consecutive invasion attempts, gave up his invasion efforts, believing that divine powers were protecting Japan. Thus, the Mongol advance was halted by hurricanes in the Sea of Japan, and the Mongols turned westward again and continued to fight other tribes on horseback. These two nations have never met again in their history. The Mongol Empire, like a flash in the pan, swept across the globe and then faded away as quickly as it had appeared. The samurai, the Japanese, seldom left their island and returned to their own secluded world. The Japanese had lost a lot in this war with the Mongols, but they gained something intriguing. They gained only one word: kamikaze. The Japanese saw the hurricanes during these 2 invasion attempts as a divine wind sent by God to save Japan. So they called these storms kamikaze, which means wind of God. For generations, the Japanese believed that their God would protect them and that Japan would never be invaded. And during World War II, as the American Navy approached Japan, they tried to fight the American warships with war tactics they called kamikaze. The story of the emergence of the word kamikaze has an important place in Japanese culture and literature, and constitutes one of the greatest cornerstones of Japan's independence and resistance.